A civil war has been raging in that tiny Central American country for more than a decade now, and some say the U.S. has been fueling that war. The main coalition on Central America wants the U.S. to get out of El Salvador. Christine Young reports.
Watch closely. This is the only way you'll get to see this commercial on this station.
Your tax dollars are putting America into the red. The red of El Salvador. $4 billion in 10 years. Taxes used by the Salvadoran military to murder 6 Jesuit priests. Money used to kill 40,000 innocent civilians. Now Washington wants to reward them with $400 million more. Tell your senator, vote no on aid to El Salvador. Keep America out of the red.
WMTW is not alone. No network affiliate in the Portland area will run the ad, and its creators are calling that censorship.
As A.J. Moose pointed out, freedom of the press is limited to those who own one.
In 2 weeks, the Dodd-Leahy bill hits the Senate floor. It calls for a cut in U.S. funding of the war in El Salvador, and the main coalition on Central America says the measure is long overdue.
The United States trains the pilots, we buy the bullets, and we tell them where to drop the bombs. It's our war, and it has been for 10 years.
Now, some of my friends, my brother Jesuits, were murdered, dragged out of bed in the middle of the night, having their skulls knocked open, and some of them had their brains scooped out and thrown on the floor. I find that kind of awful.
But Portland's network affiliates seem to think the commercial is kind of awful, or at least too controversial. WMTW says it only runs issue-oriented commercials when the issue is on the ballot. WCSH isn't running it but would not comment, and WGME says the spot is just too graphic.
We will acknowledge that it's a little bit graphic, but frankly, it doesn't come close to portraying the grisly reality of everyday life in El Salvador.
In Portland, Christine...
6 Jesuit priests, their housekeeper, and her daughter were all slain in El Salvador. Their murderers have yet to be named or punished. In Boston tonight, the anniversary of their killing was marked with both prayer and protest. Hope Kelly reports.
70,000 Salvadorans.
With a coffee can in one hand and a cross in the other, each of these religious people stood in the rain with a memory and a message.
We implore the Star Market here at the Prudential Center to be counted among those who stand in solidarity with the Salvadoran people.
They want Star to join in a boycott of Folgers coffee since it's made with some Salvadorian beans.
Your profit means continued death and destruction for the Salvadoran people.
More than 70,000 of them have been killed in the past decade. Still, it seemed far away until November when the horror hit home.
Yeah, I was at home at BC and a call came and he just told us. And so immediately we began listening to the radio and we got the news. And then when the pictures came, I began to look and I knew that, well, we got the names. And one of them is an old friend of mine, Ignacio Martin Baró. And when you saw the pictures, there he was. I mean, even though the faces were down, you could tell who was who.
Each of those victims was remembered today. 6 priests, their housekeeper, and her daughter. And with each name, more Folgers was spilled on the ground.
Ignacio Martin Baró, presente.
I'm here in the rain basically because a lot of my brothers in San Salvador see the killing and death every day. And it isn't just a comic strip story or fun and games as the manager of the Star Market seems to think it is. It's something very serious when people die.
To make their point, they marched across town at rush hour, all the way to St. Paul's Cathedral, where they arrived soaked and somber and singing. More than the anniversary of the El Salvador murders, it's also the eve of a critical House vote on U.S. aid to that country, where this year we're sinking $400 million. Tomorrow's vote is a call to withhold $20 million of that total, specifically in military aid. If it passes, it's a sizable drop, but in a very large bucket that still would surpass more than $1 million a day, and in the past decade totals more than $4 billion.
This madness has got to stop, and the only way to do it is by cutting all military aid to our country.
He is a Salvadoran refugee, a first-hand witness to a country at war, a country that has yet to name or punish the murderers.
They may well get a few of the foot soldiers, but that they're not getting to the people who are the intellectual agents of what's happening.
It's clear that the day after it happened, the whole Army High Command knew who did it. And no one heard anything from them for at least a month. Now, if that doesn't constitute a cover-up of some kind, I don't know what.
For the 10 o'clock news, I'm Hope Kelly.
Also, new peace talks between El Salvador's government and the rebels got started today in Venezuela. Neither side would comment on the content, but a rebel leader said, quote, "We are by nature optimistic, and if we were not, we would not be in the struggle we are engaged in. The talks are being mediated by the United Nations, and there is no time limit on them." Quote, "One cannot solve a civil war overnight," the mediator said. Chris.
And in Nicaragua says it'll keep trying. There's a controversy brewing over coffee. A group is urging coffee drinkers to boycott the Folgers brand, and that's prompting Folgers' parent company, Procter & Gamble, to start its own boycott. Linda Joyce explains.
A controversial political commercial has Procter & Gamble fuming and peace activists delighted.
And tell your supermarket that you refuse to buy Folgers, which uses coffee grown in El Salvador. Boycott Folgers coffee. What it brews is misery and death.
The spot ran twice, but that was too much for Folgers' parent company, Procter & Gamble. It yanked all of its ads from the station. The account was worth $1 million per year. The commercial's producers called the company's actions economic blackmail.
This is not going to go away. The boycott's not going to go away. We're organizing across the country to cut off aid to El Salvador. That's why we're doing this advertising campaign.
Procter & Gamble complains it's being singled out because it's the biggest coffee seller in the country, saying other coffee companies use Salvadoran beans as well. The protest group Neighbor to Neighbor pushed its boycott after the murder of 6 Jesuit priests last year. 9 Salvadoran military men face charges in those murders. The Bush administration complains the investigation is dragging. The coffee bean protesters blocked a shipment of Salvadoran beans in Los Angeles last February, and now the Longshoremen's Union boasts it's prevented all ships from delivering the cargo anywhere in the West.
To our knowledge, no coffee has come in since then, and we hope it doesn't come in until they straighten out their act down there.
Salvadoran officials say the boycott hurts the struggling farm workers far more than the government.
You cannot hold a whole country, a whole population, and a whole government responsible for the acts of a small group of rogue military men.
In a Berkeley coffee house, customers still drink coffee just as long as it's not from El Salvador.
We're getting about 4 or 5 calls a month asking us if we carry El Salvadorian coffee, have we ever, and do we boycott it?
Protesters hope their boycott will be felt in Washington, too. Next week, the House may vote to slash $70 million in U.S. aid to El Salvador, virtually chopping it in half. Linda Joyce for CNN in San Francisco.
Printers and engravers. From New England Telephone.